I think the first hill that you climb should not be the hill that you die on. You need to realize that the entire process of having your own business and doing all the things that you want to do is not a destination. You are not trying to climb a mountain to get to the top of a mountain. You're trying to climb a mountain so you can climb down it and then climb another mountain. It's 100% about the journey and not about the destination, because there's no destination. It's just you wandering. Not all who wander are lost.
Hello, I'm Tammy Hahnemann, a maker, digital content creator, someone who works in many different mediums with a true passion for helping others find their creative spark. I also really love to connect others who have something to share with those who want to learn. Welcome to Heart and Hands of a Maker, the creative journey. If you found us, chances are you're on a quest for creative inspiration. Maybe you're feeling stuck in an artistic rut, dreaming of turning your passion into a flourishing business, or maybe you're hoping to see your work in print or grow your online presence. Well, my friend, wherever you are on your creative journey, you're in the right place. Today, we're talking with Chris Anderson. Chris is a goldsmith, a tool maker, a lapidarist. He makes tools that streamline his processes. He also then shares these tools with all of us so that we too can benefit from his wisdom, his genius, which I know he won't like that I said that, but I am so excited to have Chris here and to actually get to know him better, because we've only crossed paths a few times. He doesn't know I stalk his videos and watch and learn so much from all that he shares. So it's time to grab your favorite beverage, settle into your creative space, and meet Chris. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And I know it'll be everybody's pleasure once they get the chance to learn and hear all about your story. So if you don't mind, please take it away. Share with us a little bit about you and how we've got to be where we are today.
So if you were to look at social media, it would appear that I've been around for a little while. I have been around for a little while, but I actually retired from 21 years in law enforcement before I started going full-time in my business. I retired in 2020, 21 years. And during that time of, working in law and justice and public safety, I always kind of felt like I didn't belong. I always felt like there was something missing. And to fill that gap of whatever was missing, I would collect hobbies. So I would come back to work after some time off, and people would joke, "What new hobby have you collected while you're off work?" And I usually had a pretty extensive, and I was enthusiastic about it. People got tired of asking me what new hobby, because I would enthusiastically talk about it, and people would go like, "Yeah, I don't really care about that. I just was asking the question."
I was just being nice.
Well, I'll just keep my enthusiasm to myself then. So it started off like in middle school. I wanted to play an instrument, actually. So I wanted to get into music, and I think it was like 5th grade, 6th grade, somewhere around in there. I tried out for band, and they'd like circle you around the instruments, have you try them out. And, I was giving it all, the cowbell and the drums and all the things. And I sat down with the band teacher after I did my one-man band demo on all of the instruments, and he scrubbed his beard a little bit, and he's like, "Have you thought about woodshop?" So some people like get really upset at the fact that he said that, and I'm like, no, I really appreciate the fact that he was honest, that he didn't see anything musically talented in me. And I'm sure it was self-serving on his part a little bit to like, yeah, I'm not going to try and teach that. But I went to woodshop, and I fell in love with woodworking and wood turning, and I wood carved, and I made furniture, and this is all in middle school. And so as I got out of shop class, I just kind of kept on picking up things. Eventually it worked into buying my first house and making some of my own furniture for the house. And then eventually my dad, my brother, and I wanted to learn to blacksmith. So we found a blacksmith shop on Craigslist and drove down to the coast and picked it up in a U-Haul truck and came back and set it up and started making scrap metal, because we had no idea what we were doing. And it was a coal-fired forge, which is a much more difficult type of forging to learn because you're having to tend to the fire, and nowadays it's much easier with gas. But I started making knives and tools, and then my brother taught me welding, and then I picked up welding and went on from there. Eventually I got into jewelry because I wanted to make my knives and tools more intricate. So I wanted to teach myself a more intricate skill. And then with getting into that, I'm like, I've always loved rocks and rock hounding and getting into that. And so I'm like, I want to cut rocks. And so I bought the stuff that I needed to cut rocks, and I started doing cabochons and faceting my own gemstones. And eventually, when it came time for me to retire, I decided that I wanted to sell jewelry, make and sell jewelry. And I'm looking at all of the other amazing jewelry makers out there and realizing that there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people who are a lot better than me at it. There's a lot of people who are just beginning and wanting to learn more. And so the Instagram following that I had at the time was primarily based on people who were looking at the things that I was making. So they wanted to, and I was sharing tips and techniques and all that kind of stuff on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And I decided that instead of selling jewelry, why not use some of the machining, and because I taught myself machining too along the way. Why not use the machining and the design and the blacksmithing, tool making, manufacturing stuff, and take my Instagram following and flip flop it, so that instead of people following me to look at what jewelry I was making, I would take those people who were like looky-loos for techniques and turn them, flip flop it into being customers.
Brilliant.
Because I would then I would essentially make jewelry and use the making of jewelry to advertise my tools.
That makes sense.
So I was still making jewelry, but I was offering a tangible product along the way. And so when it came to that, it kind of hit the ground running. I came up with an engraving adapter that Pepe Tool has now for the hammer hand piece. And then they asked me to design them a saw. And so I designed the Haymaker saw for them. And then as that started kind of progressing, I'm like, I can do this manufacturing thing myself. And so I started developing and offering tools in my own product line. And if you take a look at the website now, there's just a plethora of things to make people's jobs easier.
And I think that's part of the brilliance of what you do is you know, as a firsthand maker, how to make things work better than what's currently available, how to work more efficiently, and how to achieve the goals that you're trying to reach. And then you just are so giving of your talent, and by offering your tools that you're making for yourself, you've really enabled so many people to take their craft even further, which is really amazing.
Yeah, people oftentimes will contact me and go, I'm just a beginner. I have this question. I'm like, you and I have something in common, because at one point in time I was a beginner too. And just remind people that what we put on Instagram or Facebook or social media is what we want the world to see. Mm-hmm. We don't show them the pile of scrap underneath our desk. We don't. I have a bucket down in the shop of bucket of misfit tools of stuff that was designed and never saw the light of day because it didn't make the cut.
Yep.
And so when everyone comes on to somebody else's Instagram and goes, oh, they've got something I don't. I'm like, they have time invested. That's what it takes. It just takes time, and it takes tenacity and energy and, enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that somebody can't start today and make themselves a wonderful jewelry business or a tool business even. Mm-hmm. It just means that you got to put the boots on the ground. We talked a little bit before that I don't really like the phrase master or expert or anything like that, but there is a quote, the master has failed more times than the student has tried. And I think that's extremely important for people to remember, is that I made some pendants for family members, and they needed to make two matching pendants. And by the time I got done, I had a pile of scrap, seriously heaping maybe 4 inches tall, because I'd fail. And I go, well,
That
let's try
didn't
it
work.
again. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. Let's try it again. And, you know, it's easy to get frustrated and overwhelmed and all that. But I just started taking the approach of every time I screw up, I'd laugh at myself rather than getting angry or frustrated. I'd just laugh. I'm like, okay, now I know.
I think part of the frustration that people feel when it comes to not making something that turns out beautiful and not making something that they can just use right away is the investment in the materials that they're using and the time that they've invested. And for some people, especially those who are just starting out, like they carve out this 2 hour time slot at the end of the night after the kids go to bed and before they have to go to sleep, before they wake up to go to work the next day. So I think that part of that feeds into that frustration level. And they just want more immediate gratification so that they can be successful. And
Yeah.
it's a hard balance. And I think your approach is so refreshing. And I think it would be really good for everybody to really listen to that closely, because it just takes time and practice and the willingness to fail. And yeah.
So I have an interesting story about that. I love my dad. He is sometimes the most terrible listener in the world. And so he wanted me to teach him how to blacksmith. He'd watch my brother and I do it and make knives. And now he's now retired and he makes his own Damascus steel and makes his own knives. So it ends up he learned, he listened, he learned. But when I was first teaching him, he's like, "Can you teach me how to make a knife?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So we went through the entire process of the forging and how each hammer strike changes the direction of the metal, and sometimes you need to correct it and tell it where you need to go. And you tell it where to go by striking it with the right hammer and the right direction and all this kind of stuff. And then when it comes to heat treating and hardening it, you take your knife and you normalize the steel. It basically relaxes all the molecules so that they're nice and normalized, even. And then you heat it up again to a critical temperature, and then you quench it in an oil. And doing that makes it extremely hard, but also very brittle. So I'm like, if it goes in there and it comes out and it's bent, it's moving somewhere, don't tweak it, don't hammer it, don't bend it, don't look at it funny, because it's going to be brittle. And then if there are issues, we can correct it along the way with another process. It's like, okay. So he gets to that point and he quenches his knife and he holds it up and he goes, "Oh, it's got a little bend in it." Creak. And
Oh,
he bends it and it breaks into like 6 pieces, and throws it on the ground and stomps around. He's like, "Damn it, I wasted 6 hours." I'm like, "You didn't waste anything." He goes, "How do you figure?" I'm like, "You're never going to do that again." And so he stomps around for a little while, and then he's like, "Damn it, when did you become the reasonable one?" Because I mean, ultimately, that's it. Is that it may hold some frustration and some anger and some emotion when the screw up happens, especially if you're told not to do it and you did it anyway. but but when it comes down to it, the lesson is right. Is that now I know what happens. Now I have a cause and effect that I can associate with not doing that. And as artists, as creatives, we hold a big intrinsic value on the why. And so if we can when we teach or we mentor, I try and focus in on the why. It can tell you this is the technique we're going to use, but I'd like to reinforce that with this is why we use this technique. There are other techniques that may also work, but this is the reason why I use it.
yep. And I think that's what really does set you apart. And for people who have the expertise, is that they can provide that information. So, because I know when I teach, I also try to teach the why, so that if you want to do something different, that's fine. But this is why I'm suggesting you do it this way. If you can keep that in mind, then you could do anything else around it and it'll be fine. And
Yeah.
it empowers people to be independent, creative, and take what they learn and do something of their own. And I feel, I don't mean to diss the internet, but there are people who are on the internet who are new and don't have the expertise or the experience or the time invested to know those whys. And I it's like a cautionary tale. Like, I just feel it's important when you're learning from somebody, if you really expect a net X result, see who you're learning from and make
Yeah.
sure you're choosing well to the extent of your expectations, so that you know, can walk away with at least information that's useful.
I think one of the important things, and I tell develop, we'll talk a little bit more about kind of where the business is going now, but in some of those discussions I've had with people, the point of conversation goes to, I try and be very honest with myself about the things I don't know, and then surround myself with people who know the things that I don't.
Mm-hmm.
That way I can be honest and say those are things that I don't know, but let me contact somebody, or let me hand you off to somebody who does have that expertise. And so, I know, rather than blowing smoke and just pretending like,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's more power in admitting things that you don't know and surrounding yourself with people who do know them than there is just trying to know everything. Because I definitely don't know all the techniques, and
No, I don't think it's possible for anybody in our industry, in the jewelry making industry, in the tool making industry, in any of the mediums that are out there, for you to know everything. It's just not possible.
no.
I do feel some of the questions that I know, when I'm asked questions, it's usually something they've heard from somebody else, and I'll just recommend they go back to that person and ask, because you know, it's not something that I know. Or
Yeah.
and I think being humble and willing to admit that you don't know everything is also a true measure of somebody who's got a really good handle on what they do know. And I won't say you're an expert, but I think it does set you apart from from you know, being able to apply all of your experience. Which, oh
I
my
think
gosh,
another important thing to bring up, a little bit off topic, but very much on the
okay,
topic, is when students go to classes and say, for example, they learn something from you or they learn something from me. It's really important for students that go to other classes to not say to the instructor, that's not the way I learned, that's not the way I do it. Because the entire reason why a student, whether it's me or you or anyone else, goes to another instructor is so that you can learn the way that they teach and learn their technique. And then once you get done with that class, once you do the thing using that technique, you can come back to your own studio and go, I liked this, but I didn't quite like this. That didn't work for me.
mm-hmm.
So it's not the fact that that's not the way I do it. I mean, that's not relevant because you're taking a class from me. So it's not relevant. That's the way that you do it. You're learning it my way so that you
Right.
can decide whether or not that works into your workflow. So I think Nicole Ringgold is a good friend of mine, and I took one of her classes this last year, and that was a big point that I was like, listen, I want to make sure that I don't want to come across like I'm saying this. So we had a technique where we're making a pea pod, and when I make pea pods, I make it a completely different way. And I said, I'm really excited about learning your technique because it's contrary to the way that I do it, and so I want to see how that works for me. So I mean, that's the whole point of immersing yourself into other instructors, is you get to learn other techniques and you
Mm-hmm.
get to decide whether or not that works in your workflow. But I
Yep.
think it's also important to respect that give credit where credit is due.
Mm-hmm. I was going
So
to say, I think that's also a true mark of somebody who's really experienced, is you are comfortable giving credit when you, like, what if you came away in that pea pod the way that Nicole makes it, is like, oh my gosh, of course, that makes so
mhm,
much more sense than the way I was doing it. Then you were like, oh, look what I learned from Nicole. And then people have,
yeah,
you know, exposure to somebody else's techniques, not that you're copying or
mhm,
passing along trade secrets. I don't mean it that way, but just so that people, one, respect you for being willing to admit that it wasn't your idea and that you have learned and adapted. Two, that you are exposing her to your audience so that they can learn from her in the future. And
exactly.
yeah, I think that's so important. And
I see a lot of the contrary.
oh, me too. Mm,
It's like you're doing something that you learned in a class from somebody else and then teaching it as your own.
yeah, no.
Just give credit. You're like, I learned this. I learned this from so and so. I'm going to show you how I did it.
Yeah.
And now that Nicole has a book coming out, a lot of her techniques are very much going to be a public representation of her work. But I mean, if I learn something from you, why not just say, yeah, I learned this from Tammy. So
Yep.
it's to me, it's easy.
That's the way it should be. And I think as I would talk about copyrights and trademarks and things like that in the publishing side of life, the things that I learned, that copyrights are in place for a reason. It's to ensure that people are willing to share. It's like we won't grow if we don't share with other people. And so I don't mean just like teaching for a living. I mean, like I figured this out. Like, look at how this works. Like, if you are holding back because you're so afraid, I don't know, there's a way to describe it, but it just shuts down growth for the whole world if you're not
Yeah.
willing to share. And being afraid for people to not know that it was your idea, or to think that it wasn't your idea. I don't know. There's just
There's
proprietary.
there's something I'll kind of remind people when we talk about this kind of thing, is that there's the quote, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think that should be the whole quote. I think knowledge is power, but only if you share it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a misconception that having knowledge and holding on to it is what makes you valuable. I think that having knowledge and freely giving it is what makes it powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think whether or not that makes those of us, or those who are willing to share, you may not be able to pay your mortgage with that, or buy your next tool with that, but I think you will live a much more full life if you are sharing and helping other people, like, because it's such a rewarding part of what we are able to do as humans and as creative people. It's like, oh my gosh, look at this. And then you're like, oh wait, look at this. Like, get 5 creative people in a room for a weekend, and oh my gosh, the magic that can happen with that is
Yeah.
right. And I'm sure you were in Tucson for 2 weeks and you were everywhere. So
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a long trip.
But I'm sure just sharing and offering information to people, and then receiving information, just filled your cup. It filled your heart. It empowered other people to go home and try something new. I mean, share some of that. Like, what do you, not that you have to give away anything that you don't want to share about Tucson, but just the experience of all that sharing and camaraderie.
So in previous years, I'd worked for Pepe Tools, doing demonstrations for them. And as I grew my company, it just there was a time for me to say, I need to work on me. I need to do me. And so this was the first year that I've done that. I took kind of a guerrilla warfare approach, in that wherever anyone wanted me to be, I would be. Yeah, I'll be there. So I told you earlier, I dropped my rental car off with 2,000 more miles on it than I picked it up. I was crisscrossing Tucson for 2 weeks, demoing for Kent's Tools, and demoing at Vivi Magoo, and demoing at the casino, demoing for Sunstone Welding. I didn't sell in person while I was there, because selling, Arizona tax laws are a little terrible for people who want to sell things, especially since I have an online business. So any other business I would do in Arizona for the rest of the year, I'd then have to pay them excess taxes for, just because I'm selling in person, which, I've got no problem. If I meet that threshold, I do that. Mm-hmm. But sending down stock, worrying about payment processing, all of those things. And instead of doing that, I packed a toolkit and a roller case toolkit, and I would take that roller case wherever anyone wanted me to demonstrate. And that's essentially what I did. Is I demonstrated, I networked, I would let people know where I was going to be, and when I was at a certain show, if they came and find me, I had a discount code for them. So I did online shipping for anyone who couldn't make it to Tucson, free shipping, I should say, for anyone who couldn't make it to Tucson. But then I had a discount code for anyone who was in Tucson who wanted to come and find me at a show. If somebody said, hey, we're going to be at this show, a bunch of us are you able to come meet? Yeah, I'll come. It doesn't matter. And to me, didn't matter whether or not it was a sales opportunity or not, is that it was really important for people who have seen my tools online to now meet me in person.
Hmm.
And once you have that connection between the tools and the person, and you gain a little bit of more trust and cooperation, and getting to know. Now, Tucson is less about me buying merchandise and more about me networking.
Absolutely.
That's what it is for me.
Yep. Yep.
So that's I just kind of did the grassroots approach and just was everywhere and was open to, like, yeah, sure. I don't care if I go to bed at midnight. I don't care if I go to bed at 1 o'clock. I'll be there. Because there's no, I mean, we joked earlier that there's no day off in Tucson.
No.
There's just, you're there to work, and it'd be nice to go down there one of these days and just like relax in the sun, but it's just not the way it is for me.
No.
I
No.
can't sit.
And the one day you set aside, it'll be snowing or something
Well, the
anyway.
one day I set aside, I'm like, what should I do on my day off? I go and demonstrate for Sunstone. So
Yeah.
it's like, there's no day off.
No, no. And you're too valuable to just sit around. But it would be nice if you could treat yourself since you're down there. And it is warmer than us
Yeah.
northerners who have this winter thing going on. It's
I
nice.
have walked around in the desert before and kicked around some rocks. So I've done that while I was. In fact, I have some on my shelf over here from behind me of
Oh,
some of
yes.
the stuff that I picked up on my trip several times ago. But
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, and I would imagine if you've been at, we're demonstrating for Pepe for so long, it's also nice to not be behind a booth and stuck in one place. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but
no, no,
I'm not
absolutely.
good. Like I always say, like, don't stick me in a corner because I am not good. I'm like a caged animal. If somebody
Yeah.
puts me in a booth for 4 days, I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot stand it. So that's
See,
good. Good for
I
you.
loved booth work
Oh,
for about 2 or 3 years. And then this year I realized how many other things are going on that I just want to be there for.
yeah.
And so I don't regret doing booth work. It was a good experience for me. It allowed me to reach a lot of customers. It allowed me to demonstrate, talk about how tools can be used in different, maybe unconventional ways, or how you can use these tools in conjunction with each other to do the kind of work that you want to do. But now that I've kind of grown to the point where I want to be out there representing myself, it makes more sense for me to just go, yeah, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go.
I'm
See you
done.
later. I'm done.
Bye.
And I have a hard time committing to, I mean, even the places that I committed that I was going to be at. I mean, I like had a hard time just going, oh, I hate that I have to commit to this.
Oh,
But just because it was something like I want to go, I want to be free. And like with Kent's Tools though, I found that if I had an extra half hour, 2 hours during the day, I'd find myself at Kent's Tools just walking around helping customers.
you can't help yourself.
No, no, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Chris, you demoing?" I'm like, "No, I just came
No.
to help. I just came to help customers." So I was walking up and down aisles, and people would recognize me, and they're like, "Hey, I have a question about a tool," and so I mean, but that's the whole thing. Is it? I've had customers contact me asking whether or not I sell something particular, and it's something I don't sell, but I'll spend the time with that customer trying to find a vendor that I trust that does sell what they're looking for, rather than just say, no, I don't sell that. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Because eventually, if you treat all the people that you interact with like that, eventually they're going to come back and maybe want something from you.
Yep. Yep. Or they'll
So
tune into your video or they'll take a workshop from you.
yeah,
Like there's so many
exactly.
things that connect you to people and just building that awareness. And like you said, networking, there's different levels of networking. You made business connections, but you also make customer connections and future student connections,
Exactly.
peer connections, other people who make jewelry. I mean, you're at the whole spectrum, and that to me is what Tucson's all about. And I know you said grassroots. I feel like Tucson is grassroots no matter where you are in
Oh
the
yeah.
spectrum. I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
just like I still brought business cards. I know you and I connected, and I have all these really cool fangled new digital ways of connecting with people. And we're like, here's my business card because
Yeah.
everybody, that's so we're still old school in that place. It's just different, just
So
different.
I don't think I have it sitting around here, but I have a metal business card that I made for people to scan the QR code.
Oh yeah,
So
a dot card, or did you do it yourself?
I made it myself.
Yeah, there you go. I paid for one because I don't do
Yeah.
that. But yeah, that's just the way to do it. It makes it easier. But in Tucson, like it's just we're
Yeah.
still old school there, and it's I think it makes it special. It
Yeah,
keeps
very
it.
much so.
Yeah, yeah. What is you mentioned earlier that you're going to be teaching. So like tell me a little bit more. So you're obviously developing new tools, new ideas, you're teaching. Like what else do you have going on that kind of is the next evolution of
So I'm teaching for Silvera Jewelry Academy, jewelry school in California, doing an online class on basic engraving.
cool.
We're going to be primarily focusing on sharpening of your graver because whereas other classes do teach it, I really think that it's important to hyper focus in on what different angles mean, how to prep your graver, understanding that when it shows up from GRS or Pepe Tool or whoever, that it's not ready to cut. That is there's nothing ready about that when it arrives to you. It may be it may be a graver, it may be a purchase graver, but there is definitely prep that you need to do in order to use that properly and
Mhm.
comfortably, and as it turns out, also enjoyably. Because using an improperly sharpened graver is not enjoyable at all.
Mhm.
Using a nicely sharpened one is extremely enjoyable. So we're going to spend a lot of time focusing on that. We're going to be talking about basic cutting, some basic cuts, some basic designs, unconventional uses for gravers. People think gravers are just for engraving. Nope, they're for stone setting and they're for all sorts of other things that you could use. So they asked me if I would teach that class. I said, yeah, absolutely. So I've done some engraving. I invented the engraving adapter. I've hand graved. And then I personally now use a Lindsay air graver when I do a lot of my other work. So,
Hmm.
and the whole idea behind the engraving adapter for the Fordham was to give people an inexpensive way to see if they like power graving
Hmm.
before they want to spend money on something a bit more expensive. So
Sure.
to me, it was the natural progression to then go to an air graver because I found out that I loved it. So with the addition of instruction, I think what I would like to do is do some tutorials, like paid tutorials, for some of the products, like the paperclip mandrels, and use the paperclip mandrels to show how to make specific types of chains using those mandrels. It's super easy. I mean, you wrap your wire around it and you can create a nice paperclip link. But what other variations of that link can be used to? So just doing a recorded paid tutorial on how to use certain things. That stuff's definitely, some of that stuff's definitely going to be free on YouTube or on Instagram as well. But I think it was important for me to then take and turn into some classes that way. That way, it was a little bit of passive income for the website.
Sure.
There's a bracelet I don't think I have up here. I did not invent this link. This is a vintage link that I found and I ended up dissecting and then ended up making some tools for. The world needs more of it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. It moves so beautifully.
It moves so beautifully. This is the medium version of it. This is the large version of it.
Wow.
And then there's a small version as well.
Oh, sweet.
So when I first started doing these, I'm like, mine, oh mine. And so people are like, how are you doing that? I'm like, never you mind.
That's mine for now. Thank you.
Yeah. And so I've sold some. People love them. The big one. I've worn the crap out of this thing.
Oh, what
And
is it made with? Or in?
sterling.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And it's a cold connect.
Love it.
So you
Love
can
it.
either cold connect, you can weld it, you can solder it. But the bracelet itself is a cold connect. So before Tucson this year, I'm looking at the ones that I made. I'm like, I'm a tool maker. What am I doing? So I'm going to be developing some pancake dies for those, and then including with the pancake die a tutorial on how to do it.
Very
So
cool.
that's going to be the first product that includes a tutorial. Like when you buy the
Nice.
product, you're also paying for a tutorial.
Nice.
So that was a way for tools aren't exactly passive income, and I think for
Yeah.
artists especially, it's important to try and get as many different levels of passive income you can, because you're not always having money come in from jewelry. You're not always having money come in from pop-up shows and that kind of thing. So it's important. It's important for any business, but especially artistic businesses, to have these multiple streams of income. So for me, I couldn't not do anything. I couldn't just like, so offering a tool and then recording a tutorial on how I make them was kind of my way of doing that. To the tutorial itself, probably, I don't know, we may offer it separately, but when you buy the tool, you'll get the tutorial. I don't want to do like a hit or this. You either get it all together or you just buy the tutorial. So I haven't decided yet. I'm still working on development of that, but I think it was really important. I want to see that more in the world,
Hmm.
that link style. And the look and aesthetic of the link itself changes so much by how you texture the metal before you end up cutting it.
Nice.
So there's just all these kind of fun things you can do. Another example is like this type of chain. This is
Yeah.
done with the paperclip mandrels.
I love your paperclip mandrels. I don't think I shared that with you. I haven't bought them yet, but they're like at the top of my list. But when you released those and I watched some of the videos you did on that, I was like, it's like it hit me at my core because it's just such a beautiful link, and you make everything look easy, but it's beautiful. And then the options that you provide is
So these are
great.
the two that you saw in the video.
Oh yeah,
The kind of chain link one, and then
yeah,
the square link. This is done with a large, probably 3 millimeter. This is done with a medium 3 millimeter mandrel, and
nice.
the gauge and the shape of the wire profile changes the way that the chain aesthetic looks. And I am going to be redesigning them.
Oh,
They're right now they're about a foot long. I'm going to bring them down to maybe 9 inches, because sometimes it's hard to get a oval coil off of a mandrel. That's one reason I recommend using the Alan Revere method of curve link chains, which is he wraps paper around his mandrel and then wraps his wire and then anneals it on the mandrel. The steel that I use is perfectly okay for you to hit it with a torch and anneal your stuff on there. What happens is that paper burns away and creates a space on either side of the coil for you to slide it off.
wow.
And then the other thing that happens is that when you wrap an oval coil around a wire around an oval shaped mandrel, the part of the wire that gets more work hardened is the top and the bottom of that curve.
That makes
And so
sense.
when you slide it off, it staircases,
Hmm.
because there's all that tension now wanting to torque, and you end up with this like weird helical type coil. But if you anneal your links on the mandrel, you pull it off and you don't have that helical coil.
Got it. Got it. Well,
So
I love that shape. I think it was a really great addition to our world and the tools available to us as makers. I think, and it's showing up. You know, it's showing up in fashion, in every material. I mean, I saw it recently in lucite, so it's clearly not a new shape, but I
yeah,
feel it's definitely having its heyday. So get those new mandrels made, and
well, that was. I mean, they're a regular seller for me, but
yeah,
that was the
I
whole
can
point.
imagine.
Is that you identify. That's kind of the funny part of being a jewelry maker or a tool designer, is that I'm also paying attention to fashion trends and going, that particular type of style has an increased value in fashion trends right now.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what tools do they use to make it, and what tools can I potentially make to make that more simply?
Yep. Yep.
And so, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, and The most common thing that people ask me is, how are you able to do so much in one day?
Yeah. How are you able to do so much in one day?
I have longer days than most people.
Because you're on the West Coast,
No,
or
no,
you
no.
just
So I stay up for 24 hours and then sleep for 6 and then stay up for 24. I just get all that done.
gosh,
No,
oh
no,
my
I don't.
gosh, I hope
Time
not.
blocking, actually. Time blocking.
Ah, all right. Well, that's good
So,
advice. So not only are you a tool maker, a jewelry maker, uh, all the other things, but you are good at business, and you're good at marketing, and you're good at trend spotting. So I don't know if your wife is aware, but you are the real deal, and she's got herself quite a person in you.
and she doesn't wear jewelry.
That's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
she
She's like,
doesn't
you do your thing.
appreciate. Yeah,
Yeah. You do your thing.
you do your thing.
Yeah.
That's
But
okay.
I think it's important to, I think we talked a little about this before, is that one of the worst pieces of advice I ever got was, stop doing all those things and just figure out one thing to do. Do that one thing. And I don't I don't hold animosity for anyone who's ever given me that advice,
Hmm.
because this is the way I look at it. I look at it like the advice that they're giving is good advice for them. And because that's good advice for them, they thought that it was going to be good advice for somebody else.
Hmm.
That's just not the fact. That's not true. That particular advice for me is terrible. That particular advice is for you, as we've discovered, is also terrible. And when it comes to the things that you do on a daily basis and the things that you're involved in, that advice doesn't always match up to the personality or the drive or the to each individual. Um, when somebody tells you you can't do something, and I think it's important for you to stop and remind yourself before you react, to remind yourself that when they tell you you can't do something, it's not them telling you you can't do something. It's them saying, I couldn't do that.
Hmm.
And so it's easy for you to take that advice, or to look at that, um, and feel bad for yourself. Like, why they say I can't do this? I'm like, no, they're saying they can't do this.
So they can't imagine that you could either. They're
Mm-hmm.
projecting. So that's the other thing I think is very compelling in conversation with you, is that you either are really very well read or very well educated or something, because you pull quotes out of nowhere. You have great perspective on people and psychology, and it's like I'm so intrigued by all of whatever got you to where you are, and understanding, the fact that you can't play music though is very interesting, because that seems like a given.
It
You should
seems a
be able
very
to play.
left brain thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I play music, and I was like, oh, I'm sure you fell on this, and then the fact that the teacher redirected you is, I one, he either didn't have enough room to give you the time to teach
Yeah.
you, and he wasn't desperate.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm going to be retiring in about 6 months. So big no on that one.
The shop is that way.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Oh goodness.
So I have a relatively photographic memory.
Ah,
I can go somewhere once and then 10 years later go right back to that same place.
wow.
When it comes to quotes, I couldn't rattle them off right now, but I'll have triggers that remind me of certain things.
I love that.
And so when it comes down to a technique or something like that, I can remember a book and the page it was on. And if you look behind me, you probably can't see it in the podcast, but I have a large bookcase behind me, and those are all jewelry and lapidary books.
Uh-huh.
Let's look.
Yeah. Oh, there it is.
Yep. So,
Wow.
and it goes down farther.
Oh,
So
what a library.
those are all jewelry and lapidary books. Some of the oldest are mid 1800s, and just I soak up all of those things and all of those details, and I may not be able to reproduce it right on the spot, but I'll hit a trigger from a piece of memory or something. Go, I saw that in a book.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the things that annoyed people that I used to work with when I was with in public safety, was that they're like, I can remember movie quotes, or I can recite all the details of policy. And, just when it took me a while I'm pretty sure I could recite some revised codes of Washington, some laws and stuff. Like, I could probably tell you which number I had at one point in time. Somebody would look at me and goes, what's the RCW for possession of drugs? I'm like, which possession? And then I'd be able to rattle off the number associated with that. And I could do that with almost the entire criminal code.
Wow. Wow. Well, that to me is fascinating, because I don't possess that talent at all. That is not how my brain works. So I really envy you that ability. And I love that you use it for good and not evil.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things to remember is that this is going back to that quote that you can't do that, or you should do one thing, is that my brain doesn't work that way. My I generally need to be doing all these things in order for me to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
And
you have a good way of keeping your brain focused and trained and engaged in the right direction.
Because I know if I don't, it's going the bad direction.
Something bad will come from that.
Well, I just recently had a tool company in India knock off one of my designs.
No. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
So I unleashed hell upon them.
Good.
They contacted me 2 days later and said, how do we make this stop?
Wow. Good for you.
And so I said, before I tell you how I'm going to make it stop, I'm going to tell you all the things that I have planned for you. And so I told them I wrote a 2.5-page outline that I'm not done with, about all the things that I plan on doing to make it terrible for them if they continue copying my designs. I knew this was going to happen, and I didn't feel too bad about it. What ended up really setting me off is that one of my business partners, Michelle Lier with Lier Filigree Works, they were using pictures of her work to advertise.
Oh, come on.
And she is my co-designer of the soldering stencils. Yeah. And so they took pictures off my website. They used the same name. They used all that. And that's kind of what lit a fire. I will personally take a lot of abuse, but I have zero tolerance when somebody brings somebody else into it. So
yeah. Well, and hurt somebody that you care about, and infringes upon her expertise and her hard work, and
exactly.
Yeah, that and that's your public safety. Like, that's your, like, oh no, we're
done here. So they asked. I don't entirely believe that they're done, but they said they were done. But I reminded them that I am fully prepared to make them a new hobby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've got time. You don't sleep, so you've got time.
No, exactly. I time block.
You time block. I love that. Well, again, and that's a business practice. Like, that is something that comes out of more corporate structure. Like, you're fascinating to me. Your brain is fascinating. You're amazing. Well, I'm glad you were able to get them to at least pay attention and listen and take, and that they're hopefully taking action and reacting correctly.
It's not the first time this company's done it to a small maker, though. So I anticipate it. But things like that it's much easier for me to plan and not have to use that plan than it is for me to be caught off guard. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if I have the plan, I know how to enact it. If I don't have to, then fine, cool, we're awesome.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the copyright infringement situation. It's like, copyrights were put into place so that people would be more willing to share and give and educate other people, because you're protected. And when that right is taken away from you, it's really upsetting, because, a
lot of the time that's not really enforceable in India.
No, of course, but I know, but it right. No, it's hard to shut down.
Yeah. But
Well, I know who to call if anything ever goes sideways for me.
Yeah, we
Okay.
just grassroots try and fix the problem.
Yeah.
Unleash the community against them. And
Yeah.
that's what it was. I had no idea they were doing it until I had one of my customers contact me and go, "Did you know this?" And then when she contacted me, I had about 50 other messages simultaneous after that. And so one of the things that people ask me is like, do you have copyrights and do you have
Like a
trademarks
patent
and
or.
patents? And I'm like, I don't, because a lot of the things that I'm doing aren't, I don't think they're patentable
Mm-hmm.
because it's a paperclip mandrel.
Right.
It's a stencil. It's so when I started my business, I decided that I would go the approach of not getting patents,
Hmm.
but instead I would build my business around a community that would look out for each other and look out for me and create that trust and cooperation with my business and with other makers. And in doing that, you end up protecting each other and you create a mentality of protection and loyalty.
Hmm.
And I think that's really, really important when it comes to businesses, especially since, you know, in today's day and age, we tend to be really careful where we spend our money.
Hmm.
And I want to make sure that my business is one of those places that people feel like they can spend their money and feel like it's going to a good thing and
Hmm.
that they're taken care of. I I tend to answer my emails and phone calls after hours
Hmm.
because I know, like you and I had talked about, is that chances are people who are doing this as a hobby are doing it after their day job.
Yeah.
They're doing it after 6 o'clock until maybe 9 or 10.
Hmm.
And when they have issues come up, it's usually between that time period.
Hmm.
And knowing that, I wanted to be the type of business that would answer those emails and phone calls after hours. I've got on and I've done Zoom calls. I've done Instagram lives with people to help troubleshoot certain issues. Like, I can't believe you're doing this. I'm like, this is what I do. This why aren't other people doing this?
Yeah.
And I've had some people, I'm not about naming names, but I've had other people go, yeah, I got a sarcastic email back and that was about all I got from this other business.
Oh,
I'm like, that's not me.
no, no.
No.
And I'm with you. And I think we're too small of a world and too small of a community not to be willing to help each other. And one of the things that I've continued to hear and always replay in my head is, meet your customers where they are.
Mhm.
And that to me should include accommodating their schedule just because it's not convenient in the normal 9 to 5. Like that's not where our people are.
No,
Our
no,
people aren't there.
they're doing it from 6 to 10
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and on weekends.
Yep, exactly. And it's really squeezing it in. And oh my gosh, I remember like when you sit down to make something and you really have that time carved out for yourself and your husband's not going to be upset and your kids are sleeping or whatever, and you can't do what you sat down to do and you're so excited and you're so ready to do it. You've got
It's
everything in front of
devastating.
you. It's so upsetting.
Mhm.
And even though it's not the end of the world at that moment, it is so hard to accept.
Yeah, it's
So
devastating.
it's very kind of you to be so available. And I think
That's
most of the good businesses and the people I would say in our circle
100%.
are like that. Yeah. In your
100%.
circle. Yeah.
It's not something that I've driven. I see other people do it too.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really important business practice, especially when you're serving a smaller community like this.
Yeah.
Is that we are pretty small and tight knit, and
Yeah.
it makes much more sense for us to be able to do those things and help people out, and
Mm-hmm.
have a Zoom call, or like with the soldering stencils. Michelle is way more better at it than I am, so I send people over to Michelle,
Mm-hmm.
and Michelle's helping people out, and yeah, so it works.
It
And
does
it's
work.
definitely an important part of how you structure a business and the type of things that you do. Um, you know, but you got to figure out that out for each business.
Yeah. And I think some of that comes to the fact that your business is your business and you're not owned by a big corporation that has nothing to do with your business. or
Yeah.
with our community. You have control, a little bit more control than some other businesses are able to manage.
And I've thought about outsourcing, having
Mm-hmm.
somebody else do all that stuff so I have more time to do more creative things, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't let it go. I can't I can't see my products not supported like I would want to support them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and maybe you'll grow your business in a way that at some point you can do that, so that you can be creating or moving on to whatever is next, especially given, that seems to be the nature of your life. But you're not ready. You're not there yet.
No. No.
No.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, only July of 2020 was my official start of my business.
Yeah. So I wanted to get back to that. Like, you've only been doing this not even 3 years as a full time endeavor, and the
Mm-hmm.
amount of growth and expansion and building of your business and your network is really remarkable. I hope you have some self reflection and feel good about that.
OCD.
Oh, we've add another word to the list.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Oh, that's great.
I
That's great.
mean, I think when it comes down to what we talked about before is that when you look at somebody else's business, their Instagram following or whatever, what they have, it's easy to look at it at face value. Like,
Yeah.
I see this, how am I ever going to get there?
Mm-hmm.
I got to where I'm at by doing 100 followers, 200 followers, 300 followers, maybe back to 200 followers after I did something stupid. But when it comes down to it is that there's growth doesn't happen as fast as it used to on Instagram.
No.
And I don't look at my numbers on Instagram as a measure of my success, and neither should anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of those Instagram followers are people who do not engage with your account.
Right. And that the engagement is more important than the total number.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so it just looking at all of this. So for me, the growth happens because I try and cross pollinate where everything will go. So when I was working for the sheriff's office, I view my job as kind of like I'm like a farmer. So you'd plant seeds in people's lives. And as a farmer, you plant more seeds than you know are going to grow. And then you don't concern yourself with those seeds after they're planted because it's not your job to make sure that they grow after that. The seed should do its job and grow.
Mm-hmm.
So when you retire from something like law enforcement and you transition into a more private sector, there's a big kind of rush of what do I actually have to offer the private sector after doing this for 21 years? Mm-hmm. So I try to take all the things that were core skills and then flip them to how I would make those core skills business relatable. So say, for example, being a farmer, planting seeds. The more seeds I plant as a business, once the seed's planted, it may grow in a year, it may grow in 2 years, it may grow in 3 years, it may not grow at all. But once the seed's planted, it's not for me to think about. It's not for me to worry about. I'll just plant more seeds. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to Instagram growth or website, there are little technical things you need to do along the way, but ultimately it's networking and planting seeds and seeing what else you could potentially do to get your name out there. And then the other important thing is what sets you apart. What makes you you? What makes you different than everyone else? So there's a lot of really great jewelry artists out there. There's a lot of really great jewelry artists out there that don't have the following that they should have. So just constant evaluation and changing of things to determine and then evaluating the outcome of those things. So if I put this work in, what is the result I get? If I continually put that work in and I see no result, I need to put my work and my energy in some other place. Mm-hmm. So there's this constant evaluation of, like for me right now, it's TikTok. I don't see anything major happening with me in TikTok. we're not dating right now. Um, but I put a little bit of energy into it to see whether or not I can get some followers there. Um, Most of my website traffic is from direct searches, and I'm okay with that. The next one is Instagram and Facebook, and so
And are they searching, and you don't have to tell me this if you don't want to, but are they searching for use personally or for your tools specifically or technique?
both.
Cool.
Both. It's
That's
both.
great.
It's
Great.
said the company Line Punch Forge is the search term that people are using. So and
That's
that's
awesome.
where primarily the traffic is coming from, is direct searches for that.
That's awesome.
Other specific tools that tend to be more popular tend to drive more traffic. The titanium soldering stand, the TiQuad. I thought I had one here. I'm sure I did somewhere. Oh well. That one's been the most popular product this year, or
Great.
last year and this year, and I released it in July.
Wow. Amazing.
And so it's like things like that, like TiQuad, Line Punch Forge TiQuad will be a large search term, and it just that the other thing is like using decent hashtags on Instagram.
So that's, if I were to summarize, I would say you are tactical, you are practical, and you approach things without emotion. So some of the things you highlighted were clear to me that if something's not working, you're willing to just leave that and go plant different seeds. Where
Yeah,
some people approach it, they take it personally that their following isn't growing. They put it on themselves as a person or as your skill or whatever it is you're sharing is not resonating. But when you look at it, you get that it's more of a practical thing. So you can evaluate and pivot without putting yourself in the middle of the equation and taking it personally and deflating yourself. Like, I think that's such a valuable perspective. And I don't know if you agree with that, but that's my takeaway from what you were saying and how you approach maybe a lot of things, but definitely your social media.
I think it's also important to let people know that emotional deflation, that feeling bad, that all of that emotion that comes with that. I'm not immune to that. I have days where, I mean, I've had probably more days this year than I have other days going, I'm just going to get a day job. I'm done.
Wow.
And it's a fleeting moment. It's a screw it, I'm done. And then like 2 seconds later, I'm like, no, wait, I'm back.
Wait. I was just kidding, everybody.
JK. And I think it's for any time I have like a rush of instant, like fiery emotion like that, I try and recognize it and evaluate it, categorize it. Why am I feeling this way? How can I stop it? What is it valuable? Is it something that I need to learn from? Or is it that raw rush of just pure natural emotion that I need to recognize and then expel? So I think the first hill that you climb should not be the hill that you die on. You need to realize that the entire process of having your own business and doing all the things that you want to do is not a destination. You are not trying to climb a mountain to get to the top of a mountain. You're trying to climb a mountain so you can climb it down and then climb another mountain. It's 100% about the journey and not about the destination, because there's no destination. It's just you wandering. Not all who wander are lost.
Not all.
So
Yep.
all you're doing is wandering your way, and you're not trying to get to any one particular. You're trying to find success, but success is a journey. It's not a destination.
And I think what you said earlier about feeling like what you're seeing on social media to be what you should aspire to be, one, it's probably not fully accurate. And
No.
two, it isn't not necessarily what your goal should be. Like you should really figure out what your goals are.
Yeah.
And maybe you have a long-term goal of being wildly successful and I want to be a millionaire making jewelry, but I don't think that can happen today. So what's your today goal? What's your month goal? What's your annual goal? What's your 3-year plan?
Yeah.
And so like when you don't hit that $1 million mark in the next week, you're like, oh, forget it. I'm horrible. I can't do this. I need to go do something else. And it's just not, you're just not being fair or realistic. But
Yeah.
it is hard when you see people. And I would say, like, if people were to really just distill what we've talked about, like, oh my gosh, he's only been doing this for 3 years. Like, well, no, not really. Like, Chris has been learning and making and doing and navigating so many different things his
A
entire
journey.
life.
A
Yeah,
journey.
it is the full journey, and you have had something different in your hands all the time. And so it is maybe your official business has only been running for a couple of years, but you've been at this a really, really long time. And you've been networking and you've been putting in the legwork and you've planted a lot of seeds. So I think it's important for people to realize that's likely what's the case for all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Because I mean, if I were to take a look at my business now, 10 years ago, I wouldn't believe that I was doing what I was doing. I wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, when like working for a sheriff's office, I remember sitting behind my desk in the middle of the night going, I'm just waiting to die. This is it. This is my life. I'm just waiting to die, waiting to retire and die. This is my life. And so having that thought, I then had reflection about it. So I think having thoughts, recognizing thoughts is extremely important afterwards to then reflect upon them. So if I feel that way, if I'm seeing myself there and I equate just me sitting here waiting to die, what do I need to do to change it?
Yeah.
And so I think that night I got on and I joined International Gemological Society and
Of course you
started
did.
doing research on, just started doing research on gemstones. I have my GIA AJP now. And so it's like, you can be sad about your situation. You can be sad about where you're at, or you can change it. You may not know the steps to take, but every step you take in order to change it will be a stepping stone across the river that you're trying to cross.
That's beautiful.
So every little step you take. I think there's a song called about that.
I'm like, wait, I've got music in my head now.
Yeah. I'll be waiting for you. Yeah. But I mean, it's joking and song lyric now popping into my head aside.
I'm like,
Yes, let's just take a moment to sing the song to ourselves. But that's what it is that we get so caught up on what other people have on Instagram, and we need to tell ourselves whatever they're showing me, they're not showing me that bucket of scrap underneath their bench that was all the screw ups along the way. I'm not showing you the bucket of misfit tools that I designed underneath my bench in the garage.
yeah.
I'm not, maybe we'll do an Instagram live on that one of these days on just the bucket of misfit tools under Chris's bench. The
Oh my
fact of the
gosh.
matter is that all the screw ups, every failure is an opportunity to start over with more knowledge than you began with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, and I know when I teach, I offer that as well. Like you have to practice. I didn't just start out being able to do a wrapped loop. And I didn't have all the measurements and the process in mind until I did like 100 of them one day where I sat down and I just did 100, maybe even been more. And I remind people, like, don't beat yourself up if you can't do this like I did it. And you may find that the way I do it doesn't work for you. Your
mhm,
hand strength is different. Your tools are different. Like, just hear my words, understand the process, and then go from there.
yeah,
And then I did show them, I just taught something last week, and I'm like, and here's all the scrap that I have from what I was doing to prepare to get ready for this. Like, that's how much waste I have. I said, and
mhm,
keep that in mind because you're dealing with sterling. So you really might want to try a different metal while you're learning.
yeah,
And, it, it's I don't know. I think being honest and open about that kind of thing is really important. So I encourage you to do a misfit episode.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because it is, your tools are amazing, the way you share them, the things that people make with your tools are amazing, but to know that there's a lot more that went on behind getting that tool to where it is, I think
Yeah.
helps people realize like, oh, okay, so I'm not far off by just starting on my second
Yeah.
step. I think
Exactly. I
that's.
mean, a lot of the things that I make have several different iterations before anyone ever sees them.
Mhm. And even there, you're making changes already to the paperclip mandrel and other
Hmm.
things as you
Yeah.
get
Other
feedback.
things,
And
as it's been on the market for a while,
mhm.
eventually it gets changed and modified. The
Yeah.
paperclip bundles are an excellent example of what we were just talking about how crap I made this thing and it doesn't sell.
Oh,
It took about a year for those things to take off,
wow. Wow.
but I made them, I stocked them, I stuck them in the bins, and then I did some videos and did some more videos and just kind of let them go. And then one day people were like, oh, hey, here's the thing.
Hmm.
And some other tools have been like that for me as well. The tweezers were like that for a while. Um, it's just some things take a little while in order to catch on.
Yep.
Sometimes it's having to go to Tucson and putting it in front of people. It's I just got done at a jewelry studio in Portland, Oregon. They have me come over and do a private Tucson for them every
Oh,
once in a while, where I'll bring tools
nice.
and stones and stuff like that because I sell stones too.
Oh gosh.
Like that cabinet back here, that's all
Yeah.
faceted stones, and then the closet, and then more things. I buy out estates and
Ah.
companies over on the East Coast that have been in storage for years. I'll buy them out and put their stock back on the market. So when it comes down to it's just because you make something and you see how successful a product is doesn't mean it started off that way.
Yep.
It took, like I said, a year for the paperclip mandrels to take off.
Hmm.
I've had several other products the same way. So, it's I do it, I put it out there, and then I plant the seed, and then I move on to planting the next seed.
Yep. Well, and we talked earlier about how you have different revenue streams as well, because, like you said, tools aren't always what people are looking for, but they might be willing to learn from you and take
Mm-hmm.
that course, or buy the tutorial or whatever it might be, or they're ready to buy gemstones because they had the tool, they had the tutorial. Now, oh wait, I need a stone, and Chris knows this, so
Mm-hmm.
and it's fortunate that that's how your brain works and that's how your business is set up, and you've networked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people who are like-minded and primed and ready for that kind of mentality.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think anyone listening, anyone watching, it's
Hmm.
important for them to realize that all the work that went into getting to where you may see me at now
Hmm.
isn't something that it's easy for me to communicate. It's not
Sure.
something easy for me to show. So all it takes is for you to show up and do work, and then the next day show up and do work, and the next day show up
Yeah.
and do work. It's
Yep.
I mean, we're living in a world of a lot of instant gratification nowadays, and it's not gonna that's not a good way, a business plan. It's not a good
No.
business plan at all. So
No,
put
and
your work in.
it's not realistic to be. Not most people can't just show up and be successful without showing up a few days ahead of time and trying the same thing a few times. Like, it's just not
I
possible.
showed up to Tucson 4 days early so I could drive around town. I could get my bearings. I
Hmm.
could get things set up. I could unpack my tools to see whether or not I had everything I needed. I could see if I forgot something. I could, it's whenever you do something like that, if you're not showing up early, you're showing up late.
That's right. That's right. I just taught last weekend. I went a day early
Yep.
because I wanted to get there, unpack, set up, and say like, okay, what did I forget?
Find out where to eat. Find out.
Where to eat, right? Or
Find
make sure
out.
you can eat, get a good meal
Yeah,
before you get tired and run down.
exactly.
Yeah.
Make friends. Make friends with the locals.
Yep. Yep.
I've gone several places where I've shown up early and I've made some local friends. So I'm like, where's the food? Seriously, where's the good food at?
Like, where's the good food?
Where's the good coffee at?
Right.
And just network with those kind of people.
Yep.
Uh, I this time in Tucson, I showed up to Kent's Tools probably 2 hours early before they even opened, and I wanted to sit there and I wanted to kind of get watch traffic and
Mm-hmm.
relax. And there was
Mm-hmm.
a homeless guy sitting on the front steps charging his phone with a dog, and I'm a sucker for dogs. So
Mm-hmm.
I got out of my car and I sat on the ground next to him. We just talked about Tucson and talked about stuff, and you know, he hears the things on the streets, and he has the feeling, and I've got no problem sitting down and talking with somebody like that.
Oh.
Somebody who's has a different perspective on life, and nobody, you never know where somebody came from until you ask. He
Mm-hmm.
could be, and it turns out he's been lots of places in his life, and life had put him there right now. And so just sitting down and having conversation with people like that, you learn things.
Yep. Yep. I think it makes you a whole person.
Yeah. Yeah. Just being willing to ask or be familiar and okay with things that you may not know.
Yep. And being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yep. What else do you have going on that kind of is the next evolution of?
So the important part of where I'm kind of going with Lion Punch Forge is Metalsmith Collective. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
No.
It's its own website now,
Oh.
but it's its own website that actually links back to Lion Punch Forge.
Okay.
So Metalsmiths Collective is a collective of like-minded stores and other vendors on Shopify.
Uh-huh.
So Clay Revolution, I carry her products on my website now, and she carries mine in her website. So it's
Got it.
we collect collective with each other. I've got Sunstone Welders. I've got Maha Weeks jewelry stamps. She bought out Daniel Uriah's company when Daniel passed away early.
Oh, yeah.
She bought Daniel's company from Daniel's widow, Kim, I think, and then brought his business back to Idaho. And so she's an art teacher. She's an enamelist, and she's been creating Daniel's design as a Uriah Legacy stamps,
Oh,
and then also creating her own designs as well. So she's keeping Daniel's work alive and making sure that his work and his designs get credit, and people can still see the beauty in the world through his eyes, even though he's not with us anymore.
yeah.
Keeping it alive. So I have an integration with her website now on my website, where you can buy her stamps at Lion Punch Forge.
Wow. Wonderful.
And Corky Bolton, Milesmith Society, you can buy her book now on my website.
Right.
And then I'm slowly adding other vendors to that Metalsmith Collective. Originally, right about the time I started Lion Punch Forge website, I had this idea on creating a multi-vendor marketplace for metalsmith supplies
Nice.
for not like big companies. I say that, but Sunstone's involved in this because I think they're a great product. But people who are making their own stamps, people who are making their own components, making their own tools. I wanted to surround myself with people who had like-minded and similar products for our industry, and have it kind of like a one-stop shop marketplace for those people. You can go to Rio and you can do that kind of thing, but it's not really the market I'm looking at. I'm looking at the individual small business makers who are doing beautiful things, and people need to see their stuff. I'm hopefully going to get some other stone sellers on there. Christina with Creative Castings is going to be joining me. So we're going to have some silver and gold castings on Lion Punch Forge's website. So how this works is that they all have Shopify stores. And so when I invite a partner to sell on my site, I share my products with them so they can put my products on their website, and they share products with me. And what happens is that if that product sells on my website and it's one of theirs, I get a designated commission from that sale.
Mm-hmm.
The home store gets the majority of the profit, and then the order goes to the home store to ship. So if you can go and buy something from me, something from Maha, something from Sunstone, something from Christina, you're going to get 4 different boxes in the mail, but you're going to have one checkout.
That's amazing. Brilliant.
So what we've been trying to do there is just collect those, you know, I keep on saying like-minded. It's really important for me to surround myself with people who have the same kind of business sense and customer service sense as
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I want my customers, to feel like whoever they're buying from is a trusted source. And so the more people I invite to that collective, it's the same kind of atmosphere. Those are all vendors that I trust. Those are all people who have good products. They're all people that I want to surround myself with and network with. So for me, Tucson was very much that. Talk to
Wonderful.
Christina, talk to Sunstone. I was already collective with Clay Revolution before Tucson. Maha, same time, her jewelry stamps. So this year, I plan on adding more vendors to the Metalsmith Collective. And so for folks who want to go check that out, it's either metalsmithcollective.com, or you can go to limepunchforge.com and click on Metalsmith Collective.
Okay, cool. Cool.
So,
Well, and we'll have all of that in the show notes. That's
oh yeah,
awesome.
yeah. But I mean, that's what I'm going for this year. I realize that I can't guarantee how long my brain's going to continue pumping out new tools and inventions.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, this aspect is an aspect of passive income.
Mm-hmm.
So it's passive income on the website. It allows me to help other makers by promoting their products. I have a lot of traffic going through my website. Why not help other makers by allowing them access to that traffic?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And so that's kind of where I plan on doing this year, is maybe adding some more products and some more vendors to that. Well, it gives me some time to, figure out what the next thing is for me.
Well, and it's also good that the collective perspective is a matter of sharing, not just products and websites and revenue,
Yeah,
but you're also learning from them about their businesses, their needs as makers, so that it might help inspire you to do something that was never even on your list, but because you're able. As soon as you were telling me all the things that you do, my dad was a tool and die maker, and I only wish that he had lived long enough for me to know enough to then say, Dad, could you make me X?
mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen. So it's always wonderful to meet somebody who is similar in nature to him, that I could say, like, Chris, I have this idea and I need, like that. That's like, I think, a natural part of progression as you get to know people, and growing your network like that, I think, will only help fuel you and fuel your ideas. And
Absolutely,
yeah, it's
absolutely.
wonderful.
So one of
Wonderful.
the other things that I've had in place for a while now is I have a product team.
Oh,
The
wonderful.
product team is, I'm going to try and name them off, but I may forget one.
Uh-oh.
You have, I'm going to go geographically around the United States in order. So I have Michelle Lier, Little Metal Foxes. They're a jewelry studio in Seattle. Lainey Clark of Silent Goddess. You have Erica with Mountain Girl Cabochons. You've got Charity with Ghost Town Metalworks.
Wow.
Then moving over to Michigan, you have Jen Serene Designs. You have Allie Perry. You've got Renee Ford. And then you have Michelle Fernandez with Mishi Designs. Every single one of them has a different level of training, a different style, a different, some of them, 2 of them are stay-at-home moms who are also running their jewelry business. You have a wide range of training, experience, styles, and all of those people on that product team get free product from me when something comes out, they get to test it. They get to tell me whether or not I told them it's really important that you tell me whether or not it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear
That's the
that.
best advice. That's the
Mm-hmm.
best feedback you can get is
Yep.
like, tell me this is horrible.
Yeah. I want you to tell me what's wrong with it.
Yep. Tell me what's wrong with it.
And then the side effect of that. So we have a group on Instagram where we're talking all the time, like daily.
Wow.
And the side effect of that is that that group has become a support group, a business coaching group, a sounding board for other people in the industry to figure out, am I wrong here? Am I doing this? So the product team itself, I'm trying to figure out a way to monetize it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like Michelle gets paid for the soldering stencils. And so she gets paid. Yeah. And anyone I collaborate with and I end up selling their products, they get paid for as long as I make the product. So per sale, they get paid. But I'm trying to figure out a way for me to monetize the product team as well. So it's kind of a passive income thing for them. That's a constant thing on the back of my mind. But the product team already is this support group of people who are helping me out, and they're getting free product, and we're networking with each other. And oftentimes I don't know these things, but one of us does know. Like Jen Serene contacted the group and said, I'm looking for somebody who does custom stone cutting. And three of us were able to give her a contact for somebody we trust for custom stone cutting. I do it, but I don't have time to do it.
Yeah. No.
And it's better off to surround yourself with people who do that for a living. And rather than me kind of, go, yeah, I'll do that for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pass that on to somebody else. I have people on my website that if you look for custom stone cutting, there's a little tab there, custom stone, and it goes right to the guy who I recommend.
So that's fabulous.
Using the website as a way for connecting resources with people is another way that I've done that, just by creating trust and cooperation. A valuable aspect for people wanting to have their website get more traffic is something called cross-linking. So if I put somebody else's website link in my website and they put my website in their website, when Google does their whole like Google technology thing, they'll see that one site recommends another site, and then this site recommends that site, and then both sites become more valuable in Google's eyes.
Yep.
Because these are legitimate. Let's push them up higher in the rankings.
Yep.
So it's really important to, if there's companies that you recommend, people you partner with, link your friends, and so cross-linking is really important. That's one way that we end up trying to build each other up. Every single member of the product team has their website cross-linked to my website.
That's wonderful. Great.
So
great.
Yeah, that's kind of where we're going. I mean, I'm pretty sure I could go all day, but.
Well, I think you've given everybody not only value in all that you've shared from your experience, from your advice on how you've navigated things. I feel like there's so many great takeaways from what you've offered. And I know everybody will really appreciate having an understanding of your business and your practices and your values. And, that in itself, I think is speaks so much to who you are as a person and as a artist and as a creative person. And then just that next level of interaction and connectivity that you're creating, I think is also such a gift. It's a gift for our community that I don't know if you've gotten that feedback yet. And I want to just say that, thank you. Thank you, because it's something that's been missing. It gets lost in the noise. So thank you for being so thoughtful and giving and kind and generous with your talents and your knowledge and your experience. Not only for what you share with the tools you make, for the tools you make, but also just that community aspect of what you bring to the table, because it's so valuable in keeping our part of the world thriving and growing and progressing.
I think one of the other important things I should mention is people get a lot of DMs, a lot of direct messages on Instagram, or a lot of emails and all that. Mm-hmm. I personally answer every single one of them almost as soon as they come in.
Wow.
And it's really, really important that people do that. If they're a stone seller from Indonesia, just delete them, just block them. Don't worry about those ones.
Yeah, get rid of those
But
guys.
if it's a legitimate customer, it's a legitimate somebody who's interested in your work, spend the 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 1 minute to thank them, to interact with them. And by thanking them and interacting with them, you're planting a seed.
Yep. Yep. Well,
Just
wonderful.
answer the email. Just answer the
Just
email.
answer it.
Just answer it. We're all looking for some sort of interaction with people, and just let them have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that post-COVID, that's also an important thing, because we became so accustomed to being insular and sequestered, and where people expanded their ability to interact digitally, it didn't translate fully. So I think that connectivity, those interpersonal skills definitely got kind of squashed. So it's definitely really, really good advice to take the time. Remember, there's another human on the other side of that.
One of the interesting responses I get sometimes is, "Oh, I didn't even expect anyone to answer this."
Yeah.
I'm like, why wouldn't you? You spent the time to write it. Why wouldn't somebody spend the time to answer it?
You know, so many businesses don't have the resources, and they don't value that interaction, or the person who doesn't work there anymore. You know, like there's just so many things that get lost in changes. So it's great advice, and it's part of our world, you know, part of the way life has evolved, that it's kind of sad that we have to remind people, but it really is good advice.
Just be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
That's it.
Gosh.
There goes another quote.
Another one.
Yeah.
The show notes are gonna go crazy, like all these quotes.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Is that you wanna see change in the world? Be that change. Be the type of role model that you want to see people. You know, you want to be the thing that you want to see.
Yep.
And you know, if you can't do that, then why are you doing it?
Right.
Why would you expect it if you can't be it?
Exactly. And why would you expect it if you can't do it yourself? Exactly. Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us and spending the time and sharing so much of you. It is such a pleasure to meet people like you along my maker journey, and to have the opportunity to learn more about what goes into all that you do, and to have so many great takeaways from all that you shared today. So thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Oh, it's tremendous. Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Heart and Hands of a Maker. It's been so wonderful sharing this time with you. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want more, be sure to head over to tamarahahnemann.com/podcast for today's show notes and links to make it easy for you to find Chris and all of the information that he shared with us today. To be sure you never miss an episode, please follow or like Heart and Hands of a Maker on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you so much. That's a wrap.